What would you do if saving a child meant losing your only chance at a job? Would you risk everything for someone you don't even know? He made that choice, and what happened next was beyond belief. Stay to the end and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more powerful stories. The cold wind whipped through the streets of downtown Chicago, tugging at the corners of Derek Hayes' button-down shirt as he stepped off the metro platform. He adjusted the collar of his only decent jacket and glanced down at his watch. 8:42 a.m. Just enough time to get to the site and gather his nerves before the most important job interview of his life. His pulse beat a little faster with every step, every thought of what this opportunity could mean for him and for his mother. Derek paused at the crosswalk, eyes scanning the steel skeleton of a construction site ahead. That's where his future could begin if only everything went right. But then he saw him. A young boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, stood by himself near the edge of the construction zone, just beyond the sidewalk barrier. No adult in sight. Small hands clenched, eyes wide, uncertain. Before Derek could make sense of it, a sharp metallic creak echoed across the street, followed by the gut-wrenching sound of something heavy shifting fast. His gaze shot upward, a steel beam loose, falling, straight toward the boy, and Derek moved. Derek Hayes had never been a man to complain. At 37, life had thrown more at him than most could carry, but he wore it all with quiet grit. Born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, he had grown up learning how to survive, not how to dream. And for the past decade, survival meant doing whatever work he could find, from pouring concrete in the summer heat to overnight janitorial shifts in half-abandoned warehouses. He never minded the sweat or the sore muscles. As long as he could send money home, it was worth it. His mother, Lorraine, had been everything to him growing up, teacher, protector, the only anchor in a world full of storms. But now, age and illness had worn her down. Her heart was failing slowly but unmistakably, and the small pension she received from her decades as a public school teacher wasn't enough to cover the rising cost of her medications, let alone the procedures she needed. Derek had tried everything. He picked up extra shifts, took weekend gigs hauling scrap metal, sold the beat-up truck he'd rebuilt with his own hands just to cover 2 months of prescriptions. But it wasn't enough. The money always ran out before the month did. Then, out of nowhere, came a lifeline. A former co-worker from a job site in New Orleans, Tony, reached out, said he was now working on a major real estate development project in Chicago. Big company, big budget, long-term contracts. They were hiring and Tony could get him an interview. It wasn't a promise, but it was a shot. And Derek took it. He spent his last $200 on a one-way bus ticket and a new button-down shirt, something crisp and clean, something that made him look like more than just a man desperate for work. It was the kind of shirt that said he had his life together, even if it wasn't entirely true. He arrived in Chicago the night before, slept sitting up in the corner of a bus terminal with his duffel bag between his feet and his phone clutched to his chest. He woke to aching joints and cold air but didn't complain, not when the day ahead meant possibility. Now, standing on the city sidewalk, the skyline towering above him like giants of steel and glass, Derek felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time: hope. This interview wasn't just about a job, it was about dignity, stability. The chance to take care of his mother the way she had always taken care of him. All he had to do was make it through those front gates on time, shake the right hands, say the right words. He rehearsed the lines under his breath. I work hard. I learn fast. I don't complain, just give me a chance. He had no idea the real test was about to come before he even reached the building. The sound of groaning metal sliced through the air, followed by a chorus of shouts from across the street. Derek's eyes snapped to the source. A crane, its long arm stretching above the construction zone, had shifted slightly, and one of the steel support beams it held was now tilting, unbalanced, sliding. And directly beneath it, the little boy. Derek didn't think. His body moved before his brain could catch up. He dashed across the street, dodging a honking taxi, his shoes skidding on the edge of the pavement. The beam was falling fast. Every inch it dropped slashed another second from the boy's chances. Derek's chest heaved as he sprinted, his heart pounding like a drum. "Hey, kid, move!" he shouted, but the boy stood frozen, paralyzed, wide brown eyes staring up in terror. Derek leapt forward, arms outstretched, and grabbed the boy by the shoulders. With one final burst of strength, he yanked him backward, just as the beam crashed into the ground with a thunderous clang, sending up a cloud of dust and splinters. They landed hard. Derek's elbow scraped the pavement, a sharp jolt of pain shooting up his arm. The sleeve of his only good shirt ripped open from the elbow to the cuff, hanging in tatters. He barely noticed. His first instinct was to check the child. The boy sat beside him, breathing fast and shallow, his small fists gripping Derek's torn sleeve like it was a lifeline. His dark, curly hair was tousled, his face streaked with dust. For a second, neither of them moved, just the dull ringing in Derek's ears and the roar of adrenaline still thumping through his veins. "Hey," Derek said gently, his voice rough but steady. "You okay, little man?" The boy didn't answer. His lower lip trembled and his wide eyes stayed locked on Derek's face, still processing what had just happened. Then, after a long moment, he gave the slightest nod. Relief washed over Derek so fast it left him dizzy. He sat up, wincing at the sting on his forearm where the skin had torn. Dust coated his pants and his good shirt. The one he'd bought with his last money was destroyed. But none of that mattered. Not when this boy was alive. Derek took a deep breath and looked back toward the construction site. A group of workers were rushing to secure the crane, shouting over radios and waving off pedestrians. No one had even noticed the child until now. And the interview, he didn't even need to check his watch. He was late, very late. The job was gone, but the kid was still holding on to him, his tiny fingers tangled in fabric, his body trembling slightly. Derek sighed, running a hand through his short hair. "All right, buddy, let's figure this out. First things first, what's your name?" The boy blinked, then murmured softly, "Jaden." "Okay, Jaden," Derek said, steady and calm. "Let's find your mom." Derek knelt beside the boy, brushing a bit of dust from the child's jacket sleeve. The adrenaline was fading now, replaced by a rising awareness of the world around him, and the reality that his one chance at a job was gone. But the kid was still alone. "Jaden," Derek said softly, "you know where your mom is?" Jaden fidgeted, looking down at his scuffed sneakers. "She told me to wait in the car with the driver," he murmured. "She had to go to work." Derek nodded slowly. "Okay, that's good. So you were with a driver," the boy nodded. "But he got a phone call. He said he had to leave for a little bit and he didn't come back." Jaden's voice cracked on the last word. "I got scared. I got out to look for her, but I don't know where she is now." Derek felt his stomach twist. A 6-year-old, left alone in a car in downtown Chicago, and now just wandering the streets by himself. He glanced toward the construction site, then back at Jaden. His torn shirt fluttered in the breeze. His arm still stung. His chest was tight, not from pain but from the weight of the choice in front of him. He could walk away. Let someone else deal with it, but he knew better. People walked away from kids like Jaden every day. He almost had to. "Come on, man," Derek said gently, rising to his feet and offering his hand. "Let's get you something to eat." Jaden looked up at him, hesitated, then reached out and took Derek's hand. They crossed the street and ducked into a small bakery cafe, the warmth of the interior a sharp contrast to the biting wind outside. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon filled the air. Derek led Jaden to a corner table, then stepped up to the counter. He ordered a kid's sandwich meal and a coffee for himself, using up the last of the crumpled bills in his pocket. When he returned, Jaden was sitting stiffly in the chair, his legs too short to touch the floor. Derek set the tray down and slid the food toward him. "Go ahead," he said, nudging the paper wrapper. Jaden unwrapped the sandwich slowly, then took a cautious bite. After a few chews, some of the tension eased from his tiny shoulders. Derek sipped his coffee, studying the boy. He was scared, no doubt, but not neglected. His clothes were clean. His sneakers were new, even if a little scuffed. Someone clearly cared for him. "Do you know what your mom does?" Derek asked casually. Jaden shook his head. "Do you remember her phone number?" Another shake. "It's in her phone," he whispered. "Figures," Derek thought. Jaden looked up then, a crumb on his lip. "But I remember she was wearing her red jacket." "She always wears it when she's working." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Does she work near here?" Jaden turned and pointed through the window, straight at the tall glass office building across from the construction site. "She's in there." Derek followed the line of his finger, exhaling slowly. He had no idea who Jaden's mother was or what kind of job she had in a building like that, but the boy was certain. Derek looked at the clock on the wall. His interview would be wrapping up right about now. He could have been in there, shaking hands with a site manager, making a plan, starting over. But instead, he was here in a bakery with a kid he'd met 20 minutes ago. His stomach clenched. His chest ached with frustration and fear. But when he looked at Jaden, small, vulnerable, but trusting him now without question, Derek already knew he wasn't walking away. The wind had picked up again by the time Derek and Jaden crossed the street. Dust swirled near the edge of the construction zone, mingling with the low hum of machinery and the sharp clang of metal striking metal. The towering glass building Jaden had pointed to gleamed in the late morning light. A chain-link fence guarded the entrance, with a security booth to the side. Derek approached, holding Jaden's hand, his shirt torn, dust clinging to his clothes and his nerves stretched thin. The security guard, a broad-chested white man in his 50s with a stern jaw and tired eyes, stepped out from the booth. "You got business here?" he asked, voice flat. Derek cleared his throat. I had an interview earlier, but I also found this kid. He says his mom works in this building." The guard looked them both up and down, eyes lingering on Derek's ripped sleeve and bruised forearm. His tone turned colder. "You're late, and you brought a child into a restricted site. This isn't a daycare." Before Derek could reply, Jaden stepped forward, gripping the chain-link fence. "My mom's name is Camilla Torres," he said firmly. "She works here. She was wearing her red jacket." The guard's expression shifted slightly. "Torres," he repeated, his voice uncertain now. He reached for his walkie-talkie and mumbled something Derek couldn't hear. A tense silence followed. Then a woman's voice pierced the yard. "Jaden!" They all turned. From across the construction zone, a tall woman in a bright red jacket came striding through the maze of steel beams and workers. Her black heels clicked sharply against the concrete, and her dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail. She looked powerful, composed, but her eyes were wide, frantic. "Jaden!" she cried again. The boy didn't wait. He bolted forward, slipping through the opening gate as the guard stepped aside. "Mama!" They collided halfway. She dropped to her knees, arms wrapping tightly around him as he threw himself into her chest. Her hand trembled as it ran down his back over his arms, checking every inch of him. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "Oh my God," I thought. Her voice cracked and she pulled him even closer. Derek stood frozen at the gate, watching. His throat tightened. The nearby workers had stopped what they were doing. Conversations halted. Tools rested. Heads turned. They weren't just watching out of curiosity, they were watching her. With respect. With deference. Something clicked in Derek's mind. He looked more closely at the red jacket she was wearing. On the left breast, stitched in crisp white embroidery above the company logo, were the words, Camilla Torres, Chief Executive Officer. His breath caught. She wasn't just an employee. She wasn't a project manager or an assistant. She was the CEO, the woman running the multi-million-dollar project, the mother of the child he had just saved. Derek didn't know what came next, but as Camilla lifted her head, her tearful eyes locking onto him for the first time, he could already feel it. Everything was about to change. Camilla rose slowly, still holding Jaden close as she walked toward Derek. Her sharp heels clicked with precision, but the emotion on her face softened each step. Jaden's small fingers clung to her red jacket, his tear-streaked cheeks buried against her side. She stopped just a few feet from Derek, her eyes scanning him, his torn sleeve, dust-covered clothes, bruised arm, and worn expression. "You're the one who found him?" she asked, voice low but steady. Derek gave a small nod. "He was standing near the construction site. I saw the beam fall, pulled him out just in time." He let out a quiet breath. "We've been looking for you." Camilla glanced down at Jaden, brushing the hair gently from his forehead. "And you stayed with him this whole time?" "Yes, ma'am," Derek said. "I didn't know where else to take him. I was actually supposed to be here for a job interview, but—" he motioned toward his shirt and the site behind him. "I guess I missed it." For a second, Camilla said nothing. Then she met his eyes and her tone changed, clear, direct, decisive. "You don't need the interview," she said. "You've already proven everything I need to know. You've got the job." Derek blinked, stunned. "Wait, seriously?" "I don't offer charity," she replied. "I value people who act when it matters. You did. Most wouldn't." Derek tried to find the words, but all he managed was a nod. Then a breath of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in weeks, relief. The next morning, Derek showed up at the site at 600 a.m. sharp. He wore a second-hand work shirt and boots Tony had loaned him. No more interview nerves, just the focus and discipline that had carried him through every job before. He started from the bottom, moving materials, cleaning debris, assisting welders and steel workers. He never complained. He stayed late, asked questions, and learned fast. Word spread quickly. He wasn't just strong, he was dependable. He didn't lead by barking orders but by example. When one of the new hires twisted his ankle on site, Derek was the one who carried him to first aid and stayed until help arrived. By month 3, he was running a crew. By month 6, Camilla offered him a supervisor position, full-time salary, benefits, and the one thing he had been chasing all along, stability. Weeks later, Derek stood on the platform at Union Station, watching as a train pulled in from Baton Rouge. A familiar figure stepped off slowly. His mother, Lorraine, clutching her purse with both hands, her eyes searching through the crowd. When they locked onto Derek, she broke into a smile, tired but real. He took her hand and led her to the modest apartment he had rented in Bronzeville, clean, warm, with a bedroom just for her and a kitchen she didn't have to share. She looked around, eyes misting with pride. "You did it, baby," she whispered, touching his face. "I knew you would." And for the first time in years, Derek let himself believe it too. Sometimes, doing the right thing comes at a cost. For Derek Hayes, it meant risking the one opportunity he had been holding on to with both hands, a job interview that could change his life. In a city he barely knew, with nothing left in his pockets, he chose to stop. He chose to help a scared little boy instead of chasing his own shot at success. And in that moment, it felt like another closed door, another sacrifice. But what Derek didn't know was that the right thing, even when it delays your plans or breaks your routine, has a way of working itself back to you. He didn't save Jaden for a reward. He didn't buy him lunch or hold his hand through the chaos for recognition. He did it because someone had to, because that's who Derek was, And that simple act of decency, done quietly without any expectation, opened a door he never even saw coming. Sometimes, the moment that changes your life doesn't start with a handshake, it starts with a choice: to show up, to care, to do good, even when no one is watching.